Could you imagine applying for an apartment and finding out there were like 535 other people all applying for the same one?
Oh, wow.
That's what's going on in Ireland right now.
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we're going to like really try to get into this whole housing crisis thing in Ireland.
Okay.
And try to figure out how a country that everyone thinks of as like, you know, an economic powerhouse can't seem to house its own people.
Yeah.
It's gotten so bad that young people are actually like thinking about leaving the country altogether.
I've read some of those stories too, and it's just wild.
Yeah. So to help us understand this, we've got a really good mix of sources this time. Personal stories, statistics, historical stuff, you name it.
Sounds comprehensive.
Yeah. So it's going to be fascinating.
It is fascinating, this contrast between how successful Ireland is on paper and then this very real problem people are facing.
Yeah, it's like two totally different pictures of the country.
It really makes you think about what progress really means,
Right, for sure.
Like, what's the point of a booming economy if people can't even afford to live in their own country?
Okay, so let's rewind a little bit and talk about the whole Celtic Tiger era.
Okay.
So back in the 1990s, Ireland was like, hey, big companies like Google and Apple, come set up shop here and we'll give you super low corporate tax rates.
Right.
So that obviously worked because they all came running. But how did this economic miracle, I guess you could call it, how did it actually lead to the housing mess they're in now?
Well, all those companies coming in meant they suddenly needed a ton of workers, right?
Right.
Skilled workers.
Yeah.
And that led to a huge wave of immigration.
Okay.
The problem is nobody thought about building enough houses for all these new people.
So it's like building a giant concert hall and forgetting to put in enough seats.
Exactly. It's like, welcome to Ireland. Hope you like sleeping on the streets.
Not exactly a good look.
No, not at all.
So you've got this booming economy, tons of new jobs, but not nearly enough places for everyone to live.
Yeah.
And then, to make things even more complicated, you have the 2008 financial crisis hitting.
Oh, yeah.
Did that help or hurt the situation?
Well, at first, it actually caused the demand for housing to drop a little, which you'd think would be a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Less demand, maybe prices go down?
You'd think so, but when the economy started recovering, the construction of new houses didn't really pick back up at the same pace.
Oh, interesting.
Plus, after the crash, the rules about getting loans got a lot stricter.
So people couldn't borrow money as easily to buy.
Exactly.
Making it even harder to own a home.
Exactly. So even though the economy was getting better, actually buying a house was getting harder.
It's like a bottleneck, right?
Yeah, like a traffic jam of people all wanting houses, but not enough houses being built.
And on top of all that, you've got this booming tech industry, especially in places like Dublin.
Right.
And these tech jobs, they pay really well, right?
Oh, yeah, some of the highest salaries in the country.
So now you've got even more people with money who want to buy houses, driving the prices up even more.
Exactly.
It's like a perfect storm.
It really is.
I even read a story about a young person who moved all the way to Australia just to earn enough money.
Right.
With the hope of eventually coming back to Ireland to buy a house.
Wow.
Talk about a long-term plan.
That's pretty drastic, don't you think?
Absolutely.
It shows how this housing problem is like really getting to people.
Yeah, it's affecting their lives, their dreams, their futures.
Like they're being forced to make these crazy choices, leaving their families and communities behind.
Just to try and have a place of their own.
It's really sad, actually.
Yeah, it really is.
And it makes you think about the bigger picture, like what good is all this economic progress if people can't even afford to live in their own country?
Right, like what's the point?
Exactly.
Okay, so on top of all that, you've got another factor, which is immigration.
Right.
Now, just a few years ago, Ireland was known for being super welcoming to immigrants.
One of the highest approval ratings in all of Europe, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But things have definitely changed.
They have.
Why is that?
Well, over the last 3 years, Ireland has been getting over 100,000 immigrants every single year.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Like what percentage of their population is that?
I think Ireland has about 5.5 million people.
Yeah.
So 100,000 new people every year, that's like almost 6% of the entire population.
It's huge.
Yeah, it puts a real strain on things, especially housing.
Right, because you need a place to put all these people.
Exactly, and that's why we're seeing this shift in public opinion.
Like people are starting to get worried.
Yeah, worried about the strain on public services, worried about competition for jobs and housing.
Okay, so how much has public opinion actually changed?
Well, in 2022, only about 4% of people said they were really concerned about immigration.
Okay.
But just a year later, in 2023, That number jumped all the way to 29%.
Whoa, that's a huge increase.
It is.
So immigration has become like a major concern for voters.
It has, right up there with housing and healthcare.
Which makes sense given everything we've been talking about.
It does.
So what's the government doing about all this?
Well, they're trying, but it's a tough situation.
I've heard they're using everything from those prefab houses, the modular ones, to army bases, and even tents just to house all the refugees coming in.
Yeah, it's a bit of a scramble.
And what about hotels? Aren't they using hotels too?
Oh, yeah. Big time.
How many hotels are we talking about?
It's estimated that 1/3 of all the hotel rooms in Ireland
Wow.
are being used to house refugees or asylum seekers.
That's crazy.
It is. And there's even a plan to move like 280 asylum seekers into a village that only has 165 people living there right now.
So they're going to more than double the population of this tiny village.
Yeah, can you imagine the pressure that puts on the local community?
Oh, absolutely.
Like resources, schools, everything.
Yeah, it's a lot for a small town to handle.
It is, and it's causing some tension, understandably.
Yeah.
You've got people protesting in Dublin, even some tent cities popping up.
Oh, wow.
It's a really complex situation.
It is, and it's not just about finding enough physical space, right?
Right.
It's about managing all these different needs and perspectives.
Exactly, and making sure everyone feels safe and respected.
Which is a tough balance to strike.
It really is.
Especially when you have so many people coming in from different backgrounds, different cultures.
Right, and then you add in the economic pressures, the competition for jobs and housing.
It's a recipe for tension, for sure.
It is, and unfortunately, some of that tension has boiled over into violence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there have been some incidents, attacks on properties that are rumored to be housing refugees.
Like arson attacks?
Yeah, some of them.
How many are we talking about?
Well, since 2018, there have been 28 fires in properties like that.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is, and in Dublin alone, there have been 9 reported arson attacks just since the beginning of this year.
That's really disturbing.
It is. It's a side of this crisis that we can't ignore.
No, absolutely not.
It shows how this goes way beyond just economics. It's a social issue, a humanitarian issue.
It's about people's lives, their safety, their sense of belonging.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that these attacks don't represent most Irish people.
Right.
But they do show how much pressure the system is under.
And how desperate some people are feeling.
Exactly. And how important it is to find solutions that address both the immediate need for housing and the long-term challenge of integrating newcomers into society.
So it's not just about putting a roof over people's heads. It's about creating a sense of community, of inclusion.
Exactly. And that's a much bigger challenge.
Okay, so we've talked about the Celtic Tiger, the financial crisis, immigration, all these different factors.
Right.
But there's another layer to all of this that we haven't touched on yet.
Okay.
And that's what's called the financialization of housing. Can you explain what that means?
Sure.
And how it's making this housing crisis even worse?
Yeah, so basically it means that houses are being treated more and more like investments rather than places for people to actually live.
Interesting.
So you've got these big investment companies
buying
up tons of properties, not to rent them out to families, but just to hold on to them as investments, hoping their value will go up.
So it's like they're playing Monopoly with real houses.
Exactly. And it's driving up prices like crazy, making it even harder for ordinary people to buy a home.
So instead of homes being for families, they're being used as pieces on a giant Monopoly board.
That's a great way to put it.
And real people are the ones losing out.
Exactly. They're getting priced out of the market.
It makes you wonder what the purpose of housing really is anymore.
It does.
Is it to provide shelter and security for people?
Right.
Or is it just to make profits for investors?
That's the big question.
Because those two things seem to be at odds with each other.
They are, and it's a fundamental problem.
Okay, so given all this, how does Ireland even begin to fix this mess?
Well, the obvious answer is they need to build more homes.
Right. More supply should bring prices down, right?
In theory, yes.
But it's not that simple, is it?
It's not, because the demand for housing is still so high.
Even though prices are already sky high.
Exactly. And the Central Bank of Ireland, they've recognized that the supply of housing needs to increase.
Okay.
But the problem is, demand is still growing faster than supply.
So it's like a race they can't win.
Kind of, yeah.
They build more houses, but the demand just keeps going up and prices keep rising.
Exactly. In fact, house prices jumped by 10% just in the last year alone.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is. It's a vicious cycle.
So they're stuck. They need more homes, but building more seems to make prices go up even more.
Exactly. It's a real dilemma.
So what's the solution?
Well, they need to build a lot more homes, and fast.
Like how many?
Experts say they need around 20,000 new homes every year.
Just to keep up with demand.
Just to pick up, yeah.
That's a huge number.
It is, and it's not just about quantity. It's about the types of homes they're building.
What do you mean?
They need a mix of different types of housing.
Okay.
Apartments, townhouses, mixed-income developments.
To meet the needs of different kinds of people?
Exactly, because not everyone needs a big detached house.
Right.
Some people need smaller, more affordable options.
So it's about creating a more diverse housing market.
Exactly, a market that caters to the needs of everyone, not just the wealthy.
It sounds like a huge challenge.
It is, but it's a challenge they have to face.
Because the alternative is just unacceptable.
It is. The alternative is a society where only the rich can afford to live comfortably.
And that's not the kind of Ireland anyone wants.
Definitely not.
It's about remembering that homes are for people.
Yes.
Not just for profit.
Exactly.
So how do they shift away from this idea of homes as just financial assets?
Well, it takes a change in mindset.
Okay.
Both from policymakers and from individuals.
So what can policymakers do?
They need to put policies in place that discourage speculative investment.
Okay.
Like maybe higher taxes on second homes or properties that are left vacant.
To make it less attractive to just buy a house and sit on it.
Exactly.
Well,
they also need to promote longer-term tenancies.
So people can rent a place and know they're not going to be kicked out after a year or two?
Right. That gives people more stability, more security.
And what about building more affordable housing?
Absolutely. That's crucial.
But how do they make sure it's actually affordable?
Well, there are different models.
Okay.
Like rent-to-buy schemes, community land trusts.
Okay.
The key is to find ways to keep housing costs down.
So it's not just about building more. It's about building smarter.
Exactly.
And building for people, not for profit.
I couldn't agree more.
So it sounds like there are things that can be done.
There are, but it's going to take political will, creativity, and a real commitment to making housing a priority.
And it's not just up to the government, right?
Right. Individuals have a role to play, too.
Like, what can we do?
Well, for starters, get involved in your community.
Go.
Attend town hall meetings, voice your concerns, support organizations that are working on housing issues.
So it's about being informed, being active, speaking up.
Exactly.
What about those of us who are lucky enough to be in a position to buy a home?
That's a great point.
What should we be thinking about?
Well, don't underestimate the power of individual choices.
Okay.
If you're thinking about buying a property, really think about the impact of your investment.
Like, are we contributing to the problem or are we part of the solution?
Exactly. Are you buying a home to live in, or are you buying into a system that's making it impossible for others to afford a home?
That's a really good question.
It is, because ultimately this isn't just about bricks and mortar.
Right.
It's about the kind of world we want to live in.
A world where everyone has a chance to have a decent place to live.
Exactly. A world where housing is seen as a right, not a privilege.
Okay, so bringing it back to Ireland, do you think they can actually find a way to balance all these things?
You mean economic growth, immigration, and the need for affordable housing?
Yeah, all of that.
It's a tough question.
I bet.
They've made some progress in increasing the supply of housing.
Okay.
But the demand is still outpacing it.
Right.
And then there's the issue of affordability, which is still a huge hurdle.
I've heard some people arguing for rent controls as a way to make housing more affordable.
Right.
What's your take on that?
Rent controls can seem like a good idea.
Yeah.
But they can sometimes have unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, while they might help some renters in the short term,
Okay.
they can also discourage developers from building new rental properties.
Because they're worried they won't be able to make a profit.
Exactly. And that can actually make the housing shortage worse in the long run.
So it's a tricky situation.
It is. There's no easy fix.
So if rent controls aren't the answer, what are some other solutions?
Well, there are a few approaches that have shown promise in other places.
Like what?
For example, offering tax incentives to developers who build affordable housing.
Okay, so kind of rewarding them for doing the right thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Another idea is putting stricter regulations on short-term rentals.
Like Airbnb.
Exactly.
Because those can take properties off the market that could be used for long-term housing.
Right, and they can drive up prices in neighborhoods.
Making it harder for people to afford to live there.
Exactly.
Are there any other solutions?
Well, investing in public transportation can also help.
How so?
Well, if people can easily get around without a car,
Okay.
they might be more willing to live further from city centers.
Where housing is usually cheaper.
Exactly. So it's about making it more affordable and convenient to live in places that are outside the most expensive areas.
It seems like finding the right balance is key.
It is, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Right.
But Ireland's experience does offer some valuable lessons for other countries that are facing similar challenges.
Like, what's the biggest takeaway you hope other countries will learn from what's happening in Ireland?
I think the biggest takeaway is this. Don't wait for a crisis to hit before addressing the need for affordable housing.
Be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Plan for the future, not just for the present.
It's like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
It absolutely applies to housing.
So don't wait until it's too late.
Right. Start thinking about these issues now.
Because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to fix them.
And the more people suffer in the meantime.
So it's not just about economics. It's about people's lives, their well-being.
Exactly. Housing is fundamental to a healthy and thriving society.
So investing in affordable housing isn't just charity. It's investing in a better future for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening.
It has.
It's sobering to realize that even in a country like Ireland, which is seen as so successful,
right,
the dream of a good life can be out of reach for so many people.
Especially as they can't even afford a place to live.
Exactly. It's a reminder that progress doesn't always benefit everyone equally.
Right.
And that we need to be careful that economic growth doesn't come at the cost of social well-being.
Absolutely. We need to find a way to balance those things.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this deep dive into Ireland's housing crisis?
I'd say the most important thing is to stay informed, get involved, and demand better.
Don't be afraid to speak up.
Exactly, because the future of housing is in our hands.
Let's all do our part to create a future where everyone has a place to call home.
I'm with you on that. It's not just about quantity, though, you know? We need to think about variety, too.
Okay.
Ireland needs, a mix of everything.
Like what?
Like apartments.
Okay.
Townhouses, mixed income developments, To
cater to all the different needs.
Exactly. So it's about moving away from just seeing houses as dollar signs.
Yeah.
And getting back to that basic idea of homes as
community.
Right, a place where people can actually live and thrive.
So secure and affordable housing is not a luxury.
Yeah.
It's like a basic human need.
It is, absolutely.
This whole deep dive into Ireland's housing situation has been really eye-opening.
Yeah.
It's so complex.
Yeah.
You've got the historical roots, the economic factors, and then all these social implications too.
Right.
Makes you wonder, is this just an Irish problem? Or are other countries dealing with this kind of thing too?
I think what's happening in Ireland is kind of a reflection of what's going on all over the world.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Rapid globalization.
Okay.
All these technological advancements. And then these shifting demographics.
Yeah.
All of that is putting huge pressure on housing markets everywhere.
So even though the specifics might be different from country to country,
right,
the underlying challenges are the same.
Yeah, pretty much.
So what can other countries learn from Ireland's struggles then?
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons is the importance of planning ahead. Ireland kind of failed to anticipate how much housing they would need with all these people coming in.
Yeah.
They focused so much on growing the economy that they forgot about the basics, like making sure people have affordable places to live.
It's like they built this amazing race car.
Okay.
But forgot to put in a big enough gas tank.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the fuel, in this case, is affordable housing.
Right.
Without it, the whole system starts to sputter and stall.
And we're seeing the consequences of that in Ireland.
We are.
Young people leaving, social tensions rising, even homelessness increasing.
It's a tough situation.
So what can be done about this whole financialization of housing thing?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
When homes are treated like investments first and foremost,
right,
the needs of actual residents get pushed aside.
It's all about profits then.
It is, and that's a problem.
So what can we do about it?
Well, we need policies that discourage speculative investment. Maybe things like higher taxes on second homes or properties that are just sitting empty.
To make it less profitable to just hoard houses.
Right.
What else?
We also need to promote longer-term tenancies.
So people aren't constantly worried about getting kicked out.
Exactly. That gives people stability and security.
And what about building more affordable housing?
Oh, that's absolutely crucial.
But how do we make sure it's actually affordable?
Well, there are different models out there, things like rent-to-buy schemes, community land trusts.
Okay.
The key is to find ways to keep housing costs down, make it accessible to people who actually need it.
So it's not just about building more.
Yeah.
It's about building smarter.
Exactly. And building for people, not for profit.
Okay, so there are things that can be done.
Definitely.
It's not hopeless.
No, not at all.
but it sounds like it's going to take a lot of effort.
It will.
A lot of political will, creativity.
Right.
A real commitment to making housing a priority.
Absolutely.
And it's not just up to the government, right? We all have a role to play in this.
We do.
So what can we do as individuals to make a difference?
Well, one thing everyone can do is get involved in their community.
Okay.
Go to town hall meetings, make your voice heard, support organizations that are working on housing issues.
So be informed, be active, speak up.
Exactly. And if you're lucky enough to be in a position to buy a home,
Yeah.
don't underestimate the power of your choices.
Okay.
Think about the impact of your investment. Are you contributing to the problem, or are you part of the solution?
Are you buying a home to live in, or are you just buying into a system that's making it impossible for others to afford a home?
That's the question we all need to ask ourselves.
It's a tough one, for sure.
It is, but it's an important one.
Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about bricks and mortar.
No, it's not.
It's about the kind of world we want to live in.
Exactly, a world where everyone has a chance to have a safe, affordable place to call home.
So bringing it back to Ireland.
Okay.
Do you think they can actually find a way to balance all these things?
You mean economic growth, immigration, and the need for affordable housing?
Yeah. Can they find a way to make it all work?
It's a tough question, to be honest.
I bet.
They've made some progress in increasing the housing supply, but demand is still outpacing it.
Right.
And then there's the issue of affordability, which is a huge hurdle.
Yeah, that seems to be the biggest challenge.
It is for a lot of people.
I know some people argue for rent controls as a way to make housing more affordable.
Yeah, rent controls are a popular idea.
But they're not a perfect solution, are they?
They're not. They can sometimes have unintended consequences.
Like what?
Well, they might help some renters in the short term, but they can also discourage developers from building new rental properties.
Because they're worried they won't be able to make a profit.
Exactly.
So it could actually make the housing shortage worse in the long run.
That's the risk.
So if rent controls aren't the answer, what are some other solutions?
Well, there are a few things that have worked in other places. One idea is offering tax incentives to developers who build affordable housing.
So kind of rewarding them for doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What else?
Another idea is to put stricter regulations on short-term rentals, like Airbnb.
Okay, because those can take properties off the market that could be used for long-term housing.
Right, and they can drive up prices in neighborhoods, making it harder for people to afford to live there.
So it's about finding ways to prioritize long-term housing over short-term profits.
Exactly.
Are there any other solutions?
Well, investing in public transportation can also help.
How so?
If people can easily get around without a car, they might be more willing to live further from city centers.
Where housing is usually cheaper.
Exactly.
So it's about making it more affordable and convenient to live in places that are outside the most expensive areas.
Right, it's about giving people more options.
It seems like finding the right balance is key.
It really is, and it's not going to happen overnight.
Right, it's a long-term process.
It is, but it's a process that we need to start now.
So what's the biggest takeaway you hope other countries will learn from what's happening in Ireland?
Don't wait for a crisis to hit before you start addressing the need for affordable housing.
Be proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. Plan for the future, not just for the present.
It's like that old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
It absolutely applies to housing.
So don't wait until it's too late.
Right. Start thinking about these issues now, because the longer you wait, the harder they become to fix.
And the more people suffer in the meantime.
That's the bottom line. It's about people's lives.
Okay, so it's not just about economics.
No.
It's about people's well-being, their health, their opportunities.
Exactly. Housing is fundamental to a healthy and thriving society.
So investing in affordable housing isn't just about charity.
No?
It's about investing in a better future for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening, you know?
It has. It's been a lot to take in.
It's kind of sobering to realize that even in a country like Ireland, which is seen as so successful economically,
Right.
so many people are struggling just to afford a place to live.
It's a reminder that progress doesn't always benefit everyone equally.
And that we need to be careful that economic growth doesn't come at the cost of social well-being.
We need to find a way to balance those things, for sure.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ireland's housing crisis,
Okay.
what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
I'd say the most important thing is to stay informed, get involved, and demand better.
Don't be afraid to speak up, to make your voice heard.
Because the future of housing is in our hands, ultimately.
It's up to all of us to create a future where everyone has a place to call home.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It's like they say, right, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Totally.
And that goes for housing too, apparently.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's not just about like numbers and policies either, right?
Right.
It's about recognizing that housing is like deeply connected to people's lives.
It is.
Like it affects their health, their well-being,
Right.
even their chances in life.
Yeah, it's foundational, really.
So when people have stable, affordable places to live,
Yeah.
it creates this ripple effect that benefits everyone, right?
Absolutely.
Stronger communities, less crime,
Uh-huh.
people are more productive,
Makes sense.
all because they have a secure place to call home.
It's all connected.
So investing in affordable housing isn't just like some kind of charity thing.
Right.
It's about investing in a better future for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
This deep dive has been a wild ride, you know?
It has.
It's kind of scary to think that even in a place like Ireland,
Yeah.
a country that's known for being successful economically,
Right.
the dream of a good life is still out of reach for so many people.
Well, it is, yeah.
Because they can't afford a place to
It's
live.
a real problem.
It shows that progress doesn't always help everyone equally, you know?
Definitely.
And that we got to be careful that economic growth doesn't come at the expense of, like, people's well-being.
We can't leave people behind.
Exactly.
We need to find a way to balance those things.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you really want our listeners to take away from this deep dive into Ireland's housing situation?
I guess it's pretty simple, really. Stay informed, get involved, and demand better.
Don't be silent. Speak up.
Yeah, the future of housing is in our hands.
Let's make sure everyone has a place to call home.
I'm all for that.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, keep those brains buzzing.
And those conversations flowing.
Catch you later.
See ya!